So, hello everyone. My name is Rachel. I am a pre and postnatal specialist, specifically in pelvic health. And I'm also co founder of LØUCO, a female protein supplement brand. And I'm joined by Charlie, the wonderful Charlie, who is also pre and postnatal specialist, founder of Bumps and Burpees, author, and mum of three. So, thank you, Charlie, for joining me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me. It's
I
interesting
know.
when people say those three things, you're like, oh yeah, we juggle a lot as mums, don't we? There's
Oh,
a lot to
100%.
juggle.
100%. I always forget to mention that I'm a mum of two as well. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We're just
And
so
actually,
busy.
that's what we spend most of our life doing is being the mum bit.
Exactly. And today we're going to talk about specifically keeping active in pregnancy. It's something that's very, very close to my heart. It's actually what led me to change career because of so much misinformation out there. And there's a lot of it, right?
Yeah. A lot of it. And I think there's so much information that people don't know what's right, what they should stick to. And there's a lot of old school theories. And now with the wonders of the internet, you can just Google anything you want and you're going to find an article that says, yeah, that's okay to do. So I think it was really important that we went into this industry passionate about actually like helping people understand. And the way that I have felt about it is that I want people to not be afraid to exercise when they're pregnant. There's I get asked
Mm.
by different magazines and different blogs and things always like, what are the top 5 things that you cannot do in pregnancy? And I'm like, can we not focus on what you cannot do, because there's so much more that you can do. And yeah, there's a few things that you might not be able to do at this stage, or maybe for your body, but there's not really that much that it's like forbidden. And I always laugh when I answer these questions, like, okay, so number 1 would be like tightrope walking, probably not. Number
Yeah.
2, like, sitting in a sauna for an hour. And they're like, but I mean a specific exercise. I'm like, there isn't any, because it's just
Mm.
everyday movement. When people say to me, oh, apparently you're not allowed to twist when you're pregnant
Yeah.
in your first trimester, a Russian twist. I'm like, oh gosh, so then how do you like do your seatbelt in the car? That's a
Well,
twist, and it's like,
well, exactly.
there are so many fear-mongering messages out there that I feel awful when I hear mums come to me and they're so terrified. It makes our job so nice when we can actually calm them down and be, it's brilliant. Exercising in your pregnancy is so wonderful. I promise you, it's
Yeah.
nothing to be scared of.
And that's the biggest thing. It's the fear around movement that it's what drove me to change career, but also what I see and you see every day are people worried about what to do. And the
Yeah.
biggest challenge is, there's up to 75% of pregnant women don't meet the general physical activity guidelines. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But essentially that's 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. That's like 30 minutes walking 5 days a week, you
Yeah,
know?
well, that's it. But I reckon, one, there's things like morning sickness and horrendous symptoms that can come with pregnancy that might slow them down in terms of movement. But also, that means that they probably weren't hitting those goals before pregnancy either. And so there's just a huge problem out there that actually it's so easy. Actually, as a mum, I've realized how easy it is to hit those goals and how easy it is to not hit them. Just go on a little walk. Actually, I look on my watch and I'm like, oh, I've done all the steps I need to do today. But when you're with your little baby or you're busy working all day at the desk, you can get to the evening and you think, oh my God, I haven't been anywhere. Or I've got in the car and then I look at your watch and I've done 2,000 steps. And yes, we shouldn't be like fixating on the number, but it's just so important to remember how easy it is actually to just up that activity. Just like, oh, why don't I just actually walk to the shop instead of drive? Or
Take the stairs instead of a lift.
totally. And actually, that can rack up hundreds and hundreds of steps really quickly, but it's so easy to not do that as well.
Yeah. And you mentioned some of those barriers. I mean, time is obviously a huge one, especially, there are first babies where there's obviously multiple different pregnancies. And when you have time constraints with children at home,
Yeah.
that can be really, really difficult. So there's that's like adding to it. So how can we make it easy for women to get exercise and more physical
Yeah,
activity?
because and I know toddlers are not going to go on an hour-long walk because it would take them 60 hours to get around. But you can find other ways of doing it, because they need a lot of playing in the playgrounds and running around in the garden and stuff. So there are other sort of less conventional ways of moving. But when it comes to pregnancy, when you've already got a toddler to look after, it should be an Olympic sport, shouldn't it? It
Oh my
was one
God,
of the most
seriously.
exhausted years of my life, twice round, being pregnant with other kids to look after. So I totally see why at some stages in the pregnancy, the amount of exercise and movement you're doing does drop to the bottom of your priority list, because your priority is to just get through the day. And that's fine. We cannot be ticking off the list of perfect amount of movement every single day of every single week of pregnancy. I
Yeah, of
didn't, you
course.
didn't. It's just
No.
not possible. But
Yeah.
when you are feeling up to it, you are feeling good, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to do a workout, I'm going to go to a class, or I'm going to be in the gym. There can be so many things. I took up swimming, not took it up, I have swum before, but I did swimming in all my pregnancies and I loved it. And I've actually kept it up because I realised how much I love it for my mental well-being. It's just a really wonderful thing to do. And in pregnancy, it made me feel so good
Yeah.
because I was very light in the water. And
Yeah.
outside of the water, I felt really heavy and sluggish. But suddenly in the water, my joints were getting this rest. And I just loved it. I loved it. So it's just worth remembering that there are so many ways you can get movement in. And it doesn't need to involve like putting on a sports bra and some leggings. It could just be doing some gardening or
Yeah.
walking, or, there's so many ways.
But I think as well, so many women just feel like they don't understand. There's walking, there's gardening, there's movement. When it comes to more, I guess, structured exercise, there's this feeling of they don't have the right guidance, or they
Yeah.
don't feel as supported. I think in a survey that Active Pregnancy Foundation put out, less than half received advice about how to stay active during pregnancy.
It's the messages that probably you get, like me, I get daily. Oh my gosh, can I do this? Can I do that?
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I've been told this by my doctor. I don't know what to do. And I think there are so many women like us that love training and love lifting weights. And then we get pregnant. And even though I knew what I know, I still got nervous about certain things because I've
100%.
experienced miscarriage and I know that it's not to do with lifting weights, but I still got that fear. So if I can get it, someone who doesn't really understand pregnancy and the body and things like that, I can only imagine the fear they feel. So I think it's really, well, first of all, it's important to remind people that lifting weights is totally safe. And not only is it safe in pregnancy, it's actually really brilliant to do. Once that baby gets here, you're lifting weights all day, every day, and the weight is just getting heavier and heavier and heavier
Yeah,
and more wriggly. So it's really important to prepare our bodies for that. But before that, you've got pregnancy, which changes your posture in the most dramatic of ways, really short time frame. In order for our bodies to be able to sustain these changes in posture, it's important that we're strong, because we always get fed these like, oh, I'm pregnant, my back's going to hurt, my hips are going to hurt. And yeah, those things might happen, but they don't have to be as debilitating as we're told. If we stay on top of our movement and our strength, then actually our bodies can cope with that change in posture, especially towards the end.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? The fact that strength training, which is the biggest questions that we get asked, is what is safe? Like you said before, like, what exercise can I do? But actually, strength training is very safe and beneficial in a healthy pregnancy. Obviously, there are contraindications, which we can talk about, but use of body weight, resistance bands, your weight is appropriate. You focus on what is your baseline right now,
Yeah.
and then you adapt from there. You don't. Pregnancy is not a time to like push for those gains, but it's definitely a time to maintain. And as your pregnancy progresses, as you alluded to, you're growing this massive wriggly weight inside. You will start to tone down like the level you're lifting as your pregnancy progresses.
Because your body
Because
weight is actually more. And I think it's right to address that strength training doesn't need to be lifting a massive heavy barbell. It could be
no,
a resistance band, Pilates, body weight. It doesn't have to be that you're like this super mom lifting all these dumbbells everywhere. It might be if you want it to be, but I think that puts people off. When my best friend said to me, I keep hearing people talk about strength training. What is it? And I was like, what do you mean, what is strength training? And she's like, do I have to go to a gym? I don't want to go to a gym. And I was like, oh my God, no, you don't. Strength training is just building your strength, and that might be just from your own body weight, or it might be that you add a resistance band, or you go to dumbbells, kettlebells, barbells. There's so many ways to do it, but it doesn't need to be that you're going to a CrossFit gym or you're going to some sort of bodybuilding academy, which I think a lot of people feel it's either all or nothing, and it absolutely doesn't have to be like that. And as you said, as your pregnancy progresses, you'll be adapting things, you'll be changing the way that you stand, you'll be changing maybe the weight that you lift, or if you're lifting weights at all. And I always say to people, don't forget, if you came to me as a regular client that wasn't pregnant, I wouldn't up your weights every
No,
single week without fail, whether you were good or not. And actually, in pregnancy, basically, that's what's happening. Your body weight is getting heavier and heavier as the weeks go by, and you're expecting to stay at the same weights that you're lifting. And actually, that's a huge ask on your body. So I always remind people of that, because it would be mad if you're a regular client wanting to get stronger, and every single week, even if you were saying to me it's feeling really hard, I thought, no, add on some more weight. It would be mental, but that is
yeah.
what happens in pregnancy. It's really hard on the body.
It's really hard on the body. And I think we forget as well that those that do have children at home, like you've got 3 kids, I've got 2 kids. Firstly, the subsequent pregnancies become so much harder
Because you're lifting
on your
your
body.
children.
Firstly, like your body's used to, it's used to the changes that have happened already. Relaxin has an even bigger effect. And then you've got to then lift your big wriggling toddler who is actually growing in weight anyway.
Yeah,
So it's
100%.
actually we forget that as well. And so I think that there are definitely specific guidelines to help women through pregnancy when it comes to strength training, but the reality is life is a hell of a lot harder. And even studies more recently have shown that, and I think it's this is where it comes like the baseline of strength training versus, I guess, more heavy lifting. There's even been recent study that came out, was it last year, that even lifting, doing heavy lifting in squats, bench presses, and deadlifts at 70 to 90%, I think it was, of a 10 rep max, had no adverse effects and was well tolerated by mother and fetus, and umbilical blood flow stayed the same to
Amazing.
the babies, which is amazing, right? That's amazing for that to come out finally.
Yes, exactly. It's like how you feel. So when people say to me, "What can my heart rate be in pregnancy when I'm lifting?" and I always say, don't look at the number of the heart rate, compare it to anyone else. Look at it how you are. Like, I've always been someone where my heart rate goes really high when I'm
Mm.
training, but I feel very comfortable. I can talk, and actually, we say that we use the talk test. So if you're lifting, if you
Yeah,
do 10 reps of an exercise and you literally are like can't breathe, you can't string a sentence together, it is too much, and your body cannot cope with that. In pregnancy,
yeah,
it's not the time to be pushing. But if you could do 10 reps and your heart rate is going, but you feel like you can catch your breath really normally, you could answer a question if someone was to talk to you straight away, then actually that's fine for you. And that may change weekly, because as we know, pregnancy just throws in weeks where you're like, whoa, it's hard this week, and then another week might feel easier. Just be okay with adapting, and don't ever feel like you're not doing a good job because you can't do what you did last week,
yeah,
or
definitely.
you're not
Because
keeping up.
whether you're pregnant or not, you're always going to have ups and downs in how you feel,
Totally.
how you sleep, your stress levels, your nutrition, like everything will constantly be changing. And that's a
Yeah.
good point in terms of the talk test, right? Because when you say, your weekly goal should be at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week, what does moderate intensity mean? And it's really
Yeah.
that you're breathing faster, but you're still able to talk freely.
Exactly. And I mean, it takes a lot to stop me talking, but I
Mhm.
know that if I've been doing something flat out now that I'm not pregnant, I cannot be holding a good conversation after that. In pregnancy, I'm just a lot more aware, okay, my body needs energy for other things too, aka growing a baby. So let's conserve some, and I'm looking to work at like 70% max of my 70% of my maximal effort. And that's different for everybody. So it's hard to
Yeah.
say when people say, how much I get messaged every day, what weight should I lift? I'm like,
Mm.
I've never met you. It's really hard for me to say that, but give it a go at this. If it doesn't feel good, lower it down, or if it feels too easy, lift it up. Pick a
Yeah.
different weight. But you have to listen to yourself, and I think we are actually really good at not doing that.
Yeah.
Personally, I was not good at listening to myself all the way until I got pregnant, and then I started respecting myself a little bit more.
Mm.
But before I got married, I'd be running and having a hamstring injury, and I was thinking, no, just ignore it, keep running.
Yeah.
It's just when you're pregnant, it's just not the time. Your body is your best judge of everything, and you can listen to those signs or you can't. And what I've found from experience is that the body will just shout louder and louder and louder until you listen.
Oh,
And
100%.
what you don't want, if you're really into exercise and training, or you want to keep it up, you don't want to push yourself so much that actually you end up injuring yourself and then you can't move properly.
Yeah.
because that's defeating the whole point. So I would say if your body is giving you, you've gone to a training session, you're feeling really lightheaded and nothing you do is changing it. You've drunk water, you've sat down, you've lowered the weights, you've slowed down, you're still feeling lightheaded. Maybe that's a sign that your body just isn't up for it today.
Yeah.
Take a few days rest and go back again. But if you don't listen to that, you may faint, you may bang your head, there's all these different things. And then you're going to be out for a lot longer. So I think it's hard if you're really someone who loves training and loves exercising, but sometimes your body's just going to tell you it's not the day today.
Well, I think I agree with that, and I think I tend to see the extremes of someone that's avoided activity from the beginning, or like even from the trying to conceive phase because of concerns or worry. So then that's kind of almost so it's deconditioning your body, and then you're like, where do I start? So what happens is they tend to avoid movement, or the extreme, which those that go to CrossFit or like really love
Yeah.
lifting and they want to continue, but they're just super frustrated and they don't know what to do and they don't know whether they can still deadlift heavy and so it's like the two extremes. I tend to not really see much of the middle.
Yeah, so true. So true.
It's like one or the other, and the reality is they're like taking those two extremes. If you're doing nothing, you're not then going to suddenly get pregnant and go to the heavy lifter, and if you're heavy lifting, you should be going to nothing, right? So it's all about what's your baseline. And in the first trimester, for the most part, you're going to be feeling really, really sick,
Yeah.
really, really faint and dizzy because the blood volume, it's all catching up, and all of that becomes like I guess quite hard to manage because then when you start to feel good again, what do you do?
Where's the starting point?
Like where's the starting point? So I always say to clients, right, well, what were you doing in the month running up to your pregnancy? Let's start there. Quite simply, work with them. You're not going to push yourself to failure. You don't want to be doing that when you're pregnant. So always have 2 reps, like good reps, really, really good form reps left in the tank.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, because I think you don't want to be pushing yourself to failure, because failure will be so different at different stages in your pregnancy. So actually knowing that you've done a good rep and you've got to 8 or whatever it is, and it's like, okay, good, and getting used to that feeling of this is my new normal, this is my new good, and that can be really hard for some people.
Yeah.
And I think also a lot of people they are, like you said, trying to conceive, and they may have changed the way they're exercising, they may slow things down. A lot of people come to me, they're doing HIIT sessions, loads and loads of HIIT sessions, they're trying to slow that down. Then they're a bit lost, like a light training, but I don't know what style to do and what to do. And I think it's really important just to ask for advice, ask for help, and not be afraid is the main thing.
Yeah, definitely. And there are some conditions that require caution or prohibit exercise. We probably should touch a little bit about those. So, particularly if you're sick, obviously, anyone
Yeah,
that's really sick shouldn't be pushing. I know I see in the gym constantly sick people really going for it, whether they're pregnant or not.
I know.
That's like if you've got bronchitis, if you're anemic, if you live a completely sedentary lifestyle, then you're not going to be suddenly doing loads and loads of work.
No. So people message me a lot saying, I'm so super sick, I feel so nauseous and I'm trying to push through. And actually you just shouldn't. I promise
Yeah.
you'll be able to get back to where you were, or similar, or you hopefully, a small percentage of people do have nausea for the entire pregnancy, but hopefully you won't. And when that time comes, you can come back to it. But if you're feeling that sick that you can't get through a workout, then it's not worth pushing through. First of all, it's miserable. Maybe try and do something that's, moving, but it's not making you feel worse, like get outside in the fresh air, go for a swim, those kind of things. But that's a red flag. Another red flag is pain, like abdominal pain. Now, we should differentiate, because you can get a lot of cramping in your first trimester, and I got loads in my last pregnancy.
And Braxton Hicks towards the end as well.
Towards the end, exactly. Oh my God, Braxton. I got Braxton Hicks actually from 16 weeks in my last pregnancy.
Did you?
Before I even had a
Oh my
bump, I was
God.
like, this is mental. But yeah, you need to sort of learn the difference between like a dull ache, but shooting sharp pains in your abdomen is an absolute stop what you're doing.
Persistent bleeding, another one. Obviously,
Bleeding,
any
pain.
bleeding.
Yeah, if you're having bleeding, definitely don't push through it. Obviously,
Yeah.
spotting can be quite common,
But
but
persistent, obviously,
even
that's
so, I feel like if you're experiencing some spotting, just take a step back on the exercise, see if it slows it down. If it doesn't, and you're worried, go and speak to a medical
yeah.
professional.
And obviously just like the bigger things, right? So any underlying heart conditions, lung
Oh yeah.
conditions, preeclampsia. My mum had preeclampsia with me. Awful. She was on bed rest. I know, awful.
Low line placenta, another one.
Yes, exactly.
But all these things, when you speak to your doctor, it doesn't mean there's a few things, women who have cervical stitch and things where they actually are on bed rest, but it might not mean that you can't do anything. It might mean that you can't lift weights, but there are still things you can do and you can still move your body to help with all the changes that are going on. The other
Yeah.
thing is multiple pregnancies. So I've trained quite a few twin mums and they're all this fear put into them. You go and see a different midwife and a different doctor and you've got twins
Yeah.
in there. And actually, yeah, make sure that they're happy for you to move. But generally, you need to move. You need to stay strong even more than everyone else because you're growing two
Two
babies.
coming out. Exactly. What are you going to
Exactly.
do with your both your hands?
Exactly. You need to be more strong than everybody else. But they're just covering their backs. You have to realize that spin studios, yoga studios, all these places, they're saying you can't come in your first trimester, you can't come if you've got twin pregnancies because they're covering their back on insurance policy.
Of course, and also not everyone is as deeply qualified
Yeah.
to train that level of pregnancy or pregnant people in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's worth remembering that you are you. You know how you're feeling. If you feel like you can weightlift, you weightlift. But just get the advice that you need and get the green light from your doctor if you've got any of these conditions. And you'll know if that's you. Anyone who has a condition like that already has a medical team and they will get the advice they need. But there's very, very, very few circumstances that means you need to stay at home sitting on a sofa. We can all be moving.
Whenever in doubt, you just get in touch with a healthcare provider.
Exactly.
It's that simple.
But be aware that some of the healthcare providers, some of the midwives I spoke to studied 30 years ago, 40 years ago, very outdated advice. They were saying, oh, don't lift anything heavier than your kettle. And I was like,
And then you go to the research paper I just mentioned from last year that's doing 79% of your
and I was like,
mass.
so what
That's
do you
absolutely
expect me to
fine. Deadlifting.
do with my 2-year-old that's heavier than a kettle? She's like, oh yeah, well, try to avoid picking him up if you can. I was like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's go to a medical professional, but also just think about who you're talking to. If there's somebody who's a bit older, might be a bit, because it's still quite a new thing seeing pregnant women lifting weights in gyms. Like my sister, her neighbor, her elderly neighbor, every time she would leave the house with a bump in her gym stuff, he'd be, oh, please be very careful. Oh, please don't do anything to hurt yourself. And she
Yeah.
was like, yes. I think it's a real generation thing still. And now, no,
I had the same right up until because I was lifting right up until 30, well, right up until 40 weeks. So Alba was 41.
exactly. But I don't think it's so lovely. It's not a weird thing if you see a pregnant woman in the gym. It's actually, people are so impressed. They're like, yeah, go you, how amazing.
Empowering that, and that's what we want people to feel about. We want people to feel empowered to make
Yeah.
evidence-based, informed choices about what they do with regard to exercise and resistance training during pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it's why I wanted to create a gym plan for pregnancy, because I wanted people, if anyone came up to them to say, oh my God, you shouldn't be doing that, they can go, I'm actually following a plan, so back off. I know what I'm doing. Because I think one person makes a comment that could change someone's whole pregnancy, going, oh, actually, I don't know if I'm doing anything safe, I'm just going to stop.
I know.
And it's such a shame. So I think, yeah, empowering, because it's amazing. I felt so great walking around the gym, strutting around with my bump. There was that awkward phase where it was like, it wasn't really a bump. Looked like I just had a big lunch. And I was like, I kind of wanted to wear my baby on board badge to be, I've got baby in here. But once the bump started showing, I kind of loved it. I was like, watch me lift this weight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some of these myths that we're talking about, that they'll do harm to themselves or their baby, right? I think one of the biggest things that's close to both you and I is, the myth that doing a certain level of exercise, particularly that higher intensity, will lead to miscarriage.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence that exercise increases miscarriage risk.
No, there are so many ways that unfortunately pregnancies don't make it to the end, especially really early on, and it isn't to do with your exercise. But I always say to women, if you're that worried in your first trimester, just don't do anything that makes you feel anxious. You need to be able to sleep at night. So if you're really worried about lifting weights, then don't do it for a while. Let the pregnancy progress a bit longer. But know this, it does not cause a miscarriage. But we don't want you to feel full of anxiety. So if it makes you feel anxious, do something else instead and come back to it when you feel more confident.
And I say exactly the same thing when clients come to me and they're really worried. At the end of the day, if any exercise movement feels uncomfortable to you in yourself and it makes you close up and feels anxious and you're getting worried, just don't do it, because at the end of the day, the mind and body connect. So you've
There's
got to
no
do what you
need
feel comfortable with.
to like do lunges
What you
if you're,
enjoy. If you're not
yeah,
enjoying it, there's no
exactly.
point
There's
doing
a
it.
billion exercises we can choose from. Let's just do something
Yeah,
else.
great. Well, we talked a lot about exercise, but nutrition is also key. And when, it's not our area of expertise, but we know that a balanced diet supports
Yeah.
energy levels, provides nutrients, baby needs to grow. Protein is obviously the building blocks of life, and it's the foundation for baby's growth. So how much do you know about increased protein needs in pregnancy?
Well, I know that I don't, you can tell me the exact percentage. I'm not sure what that is, but I know that you definitely need more. And I
Mm.
felt it. You feel so depleted in your first trimester. And I think, the baby's taking everything from you. And even from just somebody who is feeling depleted, you need more protein, let alone having a baby in there. So what is the percentage increase?
Well, the RDA is 0.75 for just the general population of grams per kilogram of body weight per day. And from early pregnancy, that goes up to 1.2, all the way up to 1.5 for later pregnancy. And I think that's something that we really forget. There's
Yeah.
other research that actually shows it's higher, at about 1.7 to 1.8 into later pregnancy. But that's like a huge jump. But it's understandable. There's a growing baby, and I think we forget actually how much we need. And especially when we've got a toddler or toddlers and
Oh,
multiple kids to deal with, I know myself, I found trying to fuel my body really, really difficult. I was snacking on kids' leftovers
oh my
constantly.
God. And you end up making really
Pom
poor
bears, just
choices.
loads of pom bears.
Yeah. I had loads of chicken nuggets and loads of whatever was just on the plate. And I feel there's this whole narrative of, yeah, eat whatever you need to in pregnancy. And I'm all for that. Just do what you need to do. But also, you're not going to feel good if you don't put the good stuff in your body. And so
Yeah.
if you're already feeling nauseous, exhausted, all these things, if you can help yourself a little bit by making sure you've got some of the good stuff on your plate. And look, in the first trimester, there are certain things I could not eat, like broccoli, get away from me. There are certain things, but I could if
One
I
was fish.
reduced it or if I exactly. And it turned around 16 weeks. I was like, I'm back. Give me the broccoli. But do what you can do. And I'm very for eat the biscuits if you want, eat the chocolate,
Mm,
totally fine, as long as you're also eating the good stuff. You don't want to replace it.
yeah,
There's a lot of fear around, I can only stomach beige foods. It's like, that's fine. The baby is going to
yeah,
take from you all the goodness it needs, which is why you feel so rubbish. But if you can sneak it in here and there, smoothies were so good for me because you can make it as sweet as you need to and chuck in all the spinach, all the
yeah.
seeds and spirulinas that you need in there and stuff. And I found that that was a way for me to get that. So then I didn't feel so bad about just having pasta and cheese for my dinner.
That was exactly the same for me. At first, from a time perspective, but then also when I was completely adverse to fish, there goes some of my protein that I would
Yeah,
normally like. I love fish. I eat fish all the time. So like I
man.
was, try to get as much as you can from whole food diets and eat as well as you can. But then you will just have cravings and things. And it's more about if you need to supplement to support your diet, but
Yeah.
don't necessarily rely on it.
Yeah, totally. And also, do what you need to do, I think, is the main thing. I was panicking about every single plate of food I've got. And some days, especially when you've got other kids, you're just like, just eat enough food. That's all you need to do. But on the days that you feel good, make the most of it. Make these big, lovely salads full of all the different colours and fresh food and stuff. And on the days you don't feel good, don't worry about it. And it just evens out in the end. But it does make such a difference. Even like drinking enough water. The
Yeah,
whole day would be different.
that's why I have this.
So good. So good. I need
A client sent me
a
this
much smaller
actually.
one. But if I drink enough water, I feel so much better. And I just don't drink anywhere near enough. And I think in pregnancy, because it makes you need the toilet so much, I would
Mm,
like stop drinking at certain times of day because I'd be like, there's no way I'm going to get to the toilet. But you have to. You just got to keep it up.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Charlie. I know you've on a tight schedule and you've got to run,
Oh, I've
but
got to
it's
get them to
been a
school.
lovely, lovely chat. I think just to sum up, staying active and nourished, we know just supports both mother and baby.
Yeah. And I think don't put so much pressure on ourselves. Do what we can do, but know that there is a lot you can do.
Yeah. Listen to your body, find activities you enjoy,
Yeah.
don't be fearful, consult with a healthcare provider that you can trust. So I think if ever you're in doubt, get in touch with your healthcare provider in the first instance, but make sure you're talking to a specialist that
Yeah.
is up to date with the latest research and an expert in the field. Obviously, Charlie is one, I am
Mhm.
another. But there's loads of other resources. So, you know, the Active Pregnancy Foundation is a absolutely brilliant resource to go to help keep women empowered and active during pregnancy. We have a program, the This Mum Moves program, which you can get a list of practitioners as well that can be really useful for you to reach out to.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got Charlie and Bumps and Burpees. She's got loads of trainers on her books that can help support through pregnancy and beyond. Your book as well, Charlie. Do you want to talk a little bit about your book?
Yeah, I'm a terrible person. I haven't even got one here. I've got a book which is a pregnancy exercise book, and it takes you through trimester by trimester, just going through all the adaptations that you might want to make, and it's got workouts for you to follow in there. But then if you want something more on your phone, we've got a gym plan, and I've got a week by week follow along pregnancy plan. So it's like short
Amazing.
classes with me, taking you through half an hour classes in your home that all you need is a pair of dumbbells, and it goes week by week. So you just log in at the week you are, and I am that week too in my pregnancy, and I'll be just doing it with you. So there is loads of ways that you can do, so whatever kind of training you like doing, there'll be something for you.
Love that. And from a nutrition perspective, if you're worried about your nutrition during pregnancy and wanting to improve that, then get in touch with a nutritionist. We both have many on our books that we can put you in touch with. And if you're looking at ways to supplement, then you can also try LØUCO protein powders, which are specifically formulated for women. And one is
Amazing.
pregnancy and breastfeeding approved. So it's been completely certified during pregnancy and breastfeeding.
Best pregnancy porridge, the best protein porridge, because it's thick, taste of doesn't make the taste of anything, and you can have it while you're breastfeeding. So I'm a big fan.
And you can just shove it into food, mix it into like pre-made meals, or just use it as smoothie on the go.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much,
so much,
Rachel.
Charlie. Lovely to see
You
you.
too.